Okay, everyone, let's start. Now we are doing the revision of the other three standards in chapter number 7, that is essay 450, essay 260, and essay 265. 450, as you know, is called misstatements. ठीक है? तो misstatements के related order deal कैसे करता है? That is what we are seeing in this part. Okay, let's do it one by one. पहले देख लेते हैं यहाँ पे क्या लिखा हुआ है. Evaluation of misstatements identified during the audit, that is essay 450. So this 450 actually covers two parts. देखो, और ऑडिटर ऑडिट करते समय जो भी मिसस्टेटमेंट्स का लिस्ट बनाएगा यहाँ पे, सो ऑल द मिसस्टेटमेंट दैट द ऑडिटर आइडेंटिफाई दैट इज कवर्ड इन दिस स्टैंडर्ड. Also, when the auditor tells the management कि देखो ये सारे misstatements है, and the management then corrects some misstatement and doesn't correct some misstatement, वो जो misstatement जो management ने correct नहीं किए, उनको हम बोलते हैं uncorrected misstatements. तो auditor को check करना पड़ेगा कि ये जो uncorrected misstatements है, वो material है या नहीं है. Even that is covered in this standard. So misstatements को पकड़ना, that is covered in 450. misstatements को management को बताना और management को request करना उसको correct करने के लिए, और management ने उसमें से जो भी correct किया नहीं है, whatever the management has not corrected, that is called as uncorrected misstatements. The auditor has to check that as well. Okay, that is covered in this part. Okay, now let's go further. Let's see essay 450 क्या बोलता. Let's see this one by one. Let's start. First of all, the objective of the auditor is to evaluate the effect of identified misstatements and the effect of uncorrected misstatements, if any, on the financial statements. Auditor shall accumulate the misstatements identified during the audit other than those that are clearly trivial. Clearly trivial मतलब clearly they don't matter too much. Clearly small जो obvious छोटे मोटे errors है, that the auditor can ignore and auditor can focus on the bigger mistakes. Auditor should see that there should be misstatement. So misstatement is basically, the definition goes, how you are required to report as per AFRF and how you have actually reported in the financial statements. The difference between that is called misstatements. Okay, let's go further. Let's see further. Now we enter this epic chart in which you get coverage of all the points, and we'll do that one by one. What is the first step here? So the first step is the auditor will identify the misstatements plus make an aggregate of the misstatements that are material, and he will give it to the management. He will also request the management to examine the transaction account balance disclosure regarding this matter. Management has to do what now? Management has to first of all understand the cause of the misstatement. So what is the root cause of the misstatement? Sorry for that. Once again, management has to see the root cause of the misstatement. Management has to determine the amount. Management has to make the adjustments. Whenever the management makes the adjustment, they will inform the auditor, and when they inform the auditor will check the corrected misstatements, and that is the auditor will perform the additional audit procedures that are required to be done. That is basically seen. Now, regarding the communication between the auditor and management, how it should happen. So they have first said that auditors first should do timely communication of all the misstatements. If the management refuses to correct some or all of the misstatements, so इधर यहाँ पे लिखा हुआ है, if the management refuses to correct some or all of the misstatements, the auditor has to, just a second. Yes, if the management refuses to correct some or all of the misstatements, then the auditor has to understand the management reason for refusal, and the auditor has to evaluate whether financial statements are free from any material misstatements. Okay, that the auditor has to check. Uncorrected misstatements, whether they are material, can be dependent on a few factors. First is you have to look at the size of the misstatement, the nature of the misstatement, and whether uncorrected misstatement is in relation to any prior period item. Because of a prior period mistake, it is continuing in the current year also. There's a last year के closing balance में अगर कोई mistake है, then that will trickle down to this year's opening balance also. That is what the auditor will keep in mind. Finally, what all should the auditor document as per say 230? You remember 230 very well, that is documentation. So auditor यहाँ पे document क्या क्या करेगा? Just a second. Auditor document क्या क्या करेगा? Auditor will document that above which level we are taking transaction, and below which level the matters are clearly trivial. So trivial misstatement will be below so and so amount. Let's say auditor says कि 500 के नीचे जो भी रहेगा वो trivial है, तो that is trivial misstatement. That the auditor has to document. Second, accumulated misstatements and whether they are corrected, and uncorrected misstatements whether they are material. These are the things the auditor will document. Okay, this is the main chart regarding 450, and in this one chart only, I think all the areas are properly covered. Ensure that you are doing this properly. In the class we had done in sector wise, and I think I've given you a summary note also regarding this. Okay, that is basically this part. Let's go ahead and let's do essay 260 करते आ जाओ. Come to essay 260. Again, a chart-based essay in which it is easier for you to relate and understand. So we'll do it using chart itself. It'll be easier for you to recollect the point. So let's start with this. Now, first is essay 260 is communicating with those charged with governance. Okay? So first question is, who is those charged with governance? So the first question here becomes, so those charged with governance hai kaun? And in the class I told you have to remember Sai Baba. Remember this? You have to remember Sai Baba. Person who takes care of the strategic matters of the company, the person who is accountable, and his work includes oversight of the financial statement process. So financial statement kaise ban raha hai, that person's job includes that work also. That is basically strategic direction to the company, accountability, and includes oversight of the financial reporting process. Okay. Next is communication with the TCWG is important in assisting the auditor to first of all understand the matters regarding the entity, to obtain information, and to see whether TCWG is overseeing the financial reporting process or not. That is basically the why communication is important. Now, the next question is, sir, what are the objectives of the auditor in relation to this standard? So, auditor's objective is to have clear communication, have good two-way communication. Clear communication should be, first of all, it should be properly, it should be reasonable, and it should keep in mind the scope and timing of audit. Okay, now so the planned scope and timing of audit we should keep it in mind. Okay, sir, it should have timely observation the auditor should be able to give, so that which are significant and which are relevant, जो significant and relevant है वो ध्यान में होने चाहिए. And finally the auditor should obtain the relevant information from the TCWG. That is the main goal of the auditor as per this standard. Okay, that is SA 260. So auditor का responsibility क्या है? Auditor should communicate मेरा काम means what work auditor does. So auditor's job is to report and give his opinion on the financial statements. And keeping this in mind, the auditor will communicate and tell the management उनका काम और तेरा काम. The auditor will tell the management what is their job. So auditor will tell the management, just because I am there to make the audit report doesn't mean that your effort should be diminished. Your job is to prepare the financial statement as per AFRF and present the best possible financial statement so that it is easier for us to do the audit. Finally, the auditor will also communicate the planned scope and timing of audit. Simple that the auditor will communicate. Now, in matters to be communicated, there is another point called significant findings. The auditor will communicate the significant findings also in relation to significant qualitative aspect, that is in relation to accounting practices, policies, estimates, and disclosures. Regarding these matters, the auditor will communicate with the TCWG. Any significant difficulties that the auditor faces while doing the audit, auditor can communicate with TCWG. Any significant matter discussed with the management, and if the auditor feels that this matter should also be discussed with TCWG, auditor will discuss that matter also. Written representation that the auditor has requested, if that is still not be given by the management, then the auditor can take that matter and escalate it to the TCWG's level. Circumstances affecting the form and content of the audit report. If the auditor is going ahead and giving a modified opinion, then the auditor will make sure that he's communicating this matter with the TCWG. Finally, any other significant matters, if they are there, the auditor will communicate with TCWG. Similar, understand this area? Okay. Next, listed entities. If the auditor is doing the audit, then what all should we take care? First is ethics matter. The auditor has to take care and ensure that ethics is followed, and he'll communicate this to TCLUG as well. So other than the normal matter that we have just seen, we'll also communicate in the case of listed entities matters in relation to ethical requirements. Okay. Auditor should also communicate with TCLUG and be very open and tell about all relationships within the entity that the auditor has. Suppose the auditor's relative is working in some position, the auditor should communicate that. Suppose the cost auditor and the auditor are also related, still the auditor has to communicate that to the TCLOG. And finally, any auditor should ensure that related safeguards are put in place, and the related safeguards are in relation to independence. See, auditor should never ever forget about independence. Independence is the key, because only then the auditor will get the respect from the shareholders. Okay. So you have EAR, that is nothing but ethical requirements. A is all relationships and other matters, and R is related safeguards. All these things the auditor should do. So E, A, and R. Comfortable till here? Very, very simple. Okay, easy to understand this part. Okay, simple. That completes our essay 260. Okay. Now let's go to essay 265. Just a second. Let's see this. Now, 265 is in relation to communication of significant deficiencies in internal control. So, internal control में क्या-क्या deficiencies आ सकते हैं? That is basically the standard. So, let's do it one by one. पहले, sir, auditor should communicate significant deficiencies in internal control in writing to the TCWG, reflects the importance of these matters and assist those charged with governance. Always remember, internal control is on our way. So, on our way means we have to reach the R level and internal control हम check करेंगे, then we do our substantive procedures and we reach the R level, correct? So R level तक पहुंचने के लिए और to obtain reasonable assurance, internal control check करना वो रास्ते पे आ रही है यहाँ पे, internal control is coming on the way. So you understand, just because it's coming on the way and you find the deficiencies in internal control, you have the chance to communicate this with the management and the TCWG. However, it is not the auditor's main objective. Auditor's main objective is to report as per the standards on auditing and to and before that to obtain the reasonable assurance regarding the audit evidence that he has obtained. But internal control is a byproduct of that. So because you are on your way, you're finding the internal controls and finding some loopholes in that, you are communicating the deficiencies in internal control to the TCWG, okay, and the management in some cases. Now let's see. The objective of the auditor is to communicate appropriately with TCWG and the management deficiencies in internal control. Let's go further. Okay, just a second. Okay. Now the question is meaning of deficiency in internal control and significant deficiency. See, deficiency in control कब बोलेंगे यहाँ पे? When the control is unable to prevent, detect, and correct material any misstatement, then we say the control is deficient. Or if the control is missing, control है ही नहीं, तो control नहीं है मतलब control is missing, or control is there but the control is unable to prevent or detect and correct the misstatements. Both are covered in what? Both are covered in deficiency of internal control. Now, when do you call it as a significant deficiency? When? See, they are given there below. A deficiency or combination of deficiencies in internal control that the auditor's professional judgment is of sufficient importance. So, if the auditor thinks the control is very, very important and the deficiency is affecting it so much that it is going to cause problems in relation to financial statements, then the auditor will bring that to the attention of the TCWG. Okay. The significance of a deficiency or a combination of deficiencies in internal control depends not only on whether a misstatement has actually occurred, but also on the likelihood that the misstatement could occur. So the auditor may identify the significant deficiency either after it has occurred, after the problem has been caused, or when the auditor can foresee that because of this a problem can be caused in the future, the auditor will then inform the TCWG. So it can be either before the problem or after the problem has occurred. Okay. Let's go further. Now we are doing something called as examples of matter whether a deficiency constitutes a significant deficiency. We have done a code in the class, and that code is LAVCO monitoring parrot. So the code is LAVCO monitoring parrot. Very, very simple. Let's do one by one. Let's see this. पहले LAVCO का L square से आएगा likelihood of deficiency, then you will have loss or fraud because of that. So examples of matter where you will think that a deficiency constitutes a significant deficiency. So the likelihood if the deficiencies occur more number of times, you will have that doubt. Loss or fraud, you will have in your mind that problem is something that is a big problem. It's a significant deficiency. Then amounts are complex to determine. Amounts are exposed to deficiencies. More amount is exposed to deficiency, or the amount is very complex to calculate. Then the auditor may think that there can be a significant deficiency. Auditor will keep in mind the volume of activity that the organization is doing. And volume of activity means kitni baar wo activity ho raha hai. The more number of time if it happens and if the control is weak, it means more misstatements can occur. Okay. Next is the controls. Auditor is looking at the controls. In relation to that, the auditor looking at something called as parrot. Parrot is nothing but what monitoring parrot we'll call it. That is general monitoring of controls, then prevention or detection of fraud, accounting policies. Then after that you have O से आएगा outside the entity's normal course of business, and R से आ जाएगा यहाँ पे parties. So parties अपन ले रहे हैं यहाँ पे related party transaction parrot का, and the time period end financial reporting process basically at the year end. Any transaction where auditor is seeing that deficiencies are there in place. Okay. So you get parity here, that is prevention detection of fraud. A से आएगा accounting policy, R से आएगा related party, O से आएगा outside normal course of business, और T से आएगा we are taking instead of period we'll call it as time period. So आपको parity मिलेगा यहाँ पे PAROT. Okay. We'll take PAROT in this case. Okay. So we'll call this code as monitoring parrot, monitoring being the first word here. Okay. So monitoring parrot. Simple. अभी next में आ जाएंगे यहाँ पे, and the two extra points to remember is exceptions. You can see here exceptions, what we thought, what we got is called exceptions. And finally, interaction of the deficiency with other deficiencies also we are looking at here. Okay? That is what you are looking at in the case of your examples of matter where the deficiency constitutes a significant deficiency or not. Okay. That completes of this point, and that is exactly what this code is. LAVCO monitoring parrot, and with their two additional points at the end, that is in relation to exceptions and interaction. Okay. Let's go to the next answer. Let's see this. Now this is in relation to examples of indicators of significant deficiencies in internal control. पहले था first वाला question था examples where when will you consider a deficiency as a significant deficiency. Now this is examples of indicators of significant deficiencies in internal control. So either the year they are said in a very simple way, very nice answer, very simple, and we'll just go through it. Please here. First is you will check whether control environment is ineffective. Now the three symbols of that is M, M, and M. First is management. Management is financially interested in any transaction. Management यहाँ पे कुछ झोल करने का plan कर रही है. Just again, management is financially interested in any transaction. Next is in relation to management fraud. We are having a doubt that there can be a management fraud, and the management is finding there is a failure to implement the appropriate remedial action. So we'll understand here that you can take management, or you can take financially interested, fraud, and failure to implement appropriate remedial action. That is FFF. Okay, that is what you will see here. Next is risk assessment process is absent. Risk assessment process is ineffective, or risk assessment process is unable to give an effective response. So there is ineffective response in relation to the identified significant risk. Okay, so ये risk assessment process के 3 points हो गए. After that, internal control is not able to prevent, detect, and correct the misstatements. And then after that, you will see that prior period items की वजह से इस साल में in this year we are having problems. That is basically the prior period items that is causing an issue in relation to the current period's audit. Okay, and the last point that they have given, just a second, is in relation to the management is unable to have the overseeing of the preparation of the financial statement, which is a bad thing because the management doesn't know whether the financial statements are prepared properly or not. That is basically this. Oversee the preparation of financial statement and prior period items, the two P's which are there. Okay, that is basically this point. That is examples of indicators of significant deficiencies in internal control. Let's go to the next part here, and that is now it is basically a read area only, very very simple area. Sir, what all will you communicate with management and what all will you communicate to TCWG? देखो ध्यान से सुनना. With the management, no, you will discuss all issues. Okay, all issues. But with the TCLOG, you will discuss only the significant matter. So you understand, see, communicate in writing significant deficiencies. Once again, communicate in writing significant deficiencies in internal control in relation to those charged with governance. And the auditor shall also communicate to the management. And to the management, the auditor will communicate the significant deficiencies as well and any other deficiencies as well. So both will discuss with the management. But याद रखना TCLBG के साथ will only discuss the significant deficiencies. But management के साथ you will discuss the significant deficiencies also and other deficiencies also. Now, whenever you communicate with management or TCLBG, see there are people working at the higher position. So you have to ensure that your communication is very, very clear. So they have said here you should provide a description of the deficiency. Sufficient information you have to provide to them so that they are able to understand the context of the communication. That is very, very important. Okay, and that completes for us essay 265. So ensure karna that DC standard very, very simple, 450, 260, 265. New inclusions in the CA inter syllabus, and you are doing this properly. One question can come from these three standards. Okay, that completes our part 2 of chapter number 7, and for that we have done that now. Okay, so do it properly. Everyone very, very clear? Please tell me yes or no.